You said the wholesalers control a lot. How do breweries that have tap rooms get away with that? Because I know I'm from Michigan, and so I've been to plenty of breweries there. There's a lot of microbreweries in Michigan. It's growing a lot there, and we just go to the brewery and buy beer there and drink there. How do they get away?
Are you able to take beer out though?
Yes.
Like bottles? Okay. Yeah. There's a few states that do allow breweries to do that, but what they don't do, and this is how the wholesalers give the check mark and say that's fine. It's usually, if you're in a state like Michigan, I know in Minnesota it's this way, or has been until the last year, is a brew pub can sell their beer off premise. They can give a person who comes into the brew pub beer to take off, but they cannot sell it to a retail outlet. They cannot give their beer to a store, because then they'd be cutting out the wholesaler and the middleman. So wholesalers are generally okay if they're just selling it on premise to people to take away, but once the brew pub tries to cut them out of anything by getting directly to a retail outlet or directly to a consumer, that's when they get upset.
Okay, because I know I can buy beer from my favorite brewery here, so they must use a wholesaler that I just didn't know.
DC Brown, you mean? Or like 3-Star?
It's actually called Founders. It's in Michigan. My favorite.
Okay.
But I can buy it here.
100% will be using a wholesaler. There's no way they're doing it on their own. A few states allow brewers to bypass, but it's very specific. It's a certain limited amount. Like Massachusetts, for example, allows farmer brewers to sell something like 100,000 barrels a year directly, just by skipping by. And that's to speak to what you said, that the states are learning to support the small craft brew movement, to give them ways to get around the three-tiered system. Because if a wholesaler does not choose to sell your beer, you are locked out of the market in a lot of places. If they don't form a contract with you, they say, we don't want to put your beer in our portfolio, you're out. That's it. There's no way to get to market.
Anthony, so the paleo diet, which again is eat lots of vegetables, eats lots of really fatty meat, and then also, some fruit, but almost no wheat. Is this a diet that works for everyone, or just for crazy people? In your experience, I mean, do you know people who've tried it and it doesn't work at all, or is this something that everyone should do?
Well, this gets into a lot of the physiological aspects of food and diet, and I am no expert, but I've done some reading on it, and a lot of it has to do with insulin sensitivity and how your body chooses to process the foods that it eats. So carbohydrates, so sugars, wheat, bread, cereals, any beer, wine, Four Loko, right? Anything with carbs is going to naturally spike your insulin, because your insulin is the hormone in your body that basically finds a way to distribute glucose.
Is there any alcohol?
Yeah. Oh no. So I mean, if you look at the science behind it, and I only have 2 years of chemistry, so I'm no expert at all in this. But basically, if it's an alcohol or a carbon-based molecule, well, not such a carbohydrate-based molecule, it's gonna spike your insulin, which is a hormone that regulates how glucose gets to the rest of your body. And there's a lot of misinformation about that. The most common understanding of how your body works is if you eat a lot of calories and you don't expend it through exercise, you're going to get fat, right? There's a lot of studies coming out right now that's proving that this is not true at all. More importantly, there were a lot of evidence, maybe 50 years plus ago, saying that you got to eat, high foods with high nutritional density, like meats and vegetables, and so grains tend to have low nutritional value but high calorie, and that will really spike your insulin, which makes you gain weight. But in the past 50 years, there was a guy named Ansel Keys who came out with a study that says that it was an incomplete study that basically said that fat, like animal fat, makes you fat and healthy and increases your chance of heart disease. And so everyone grabbed onto this and were like, oh my God, we have to save the world from animal fat. And George McGovern, who I'm sure many of you are aware of, the senator from North Dakota? South Dakota, thank you. He went on this mission to save the world from hunger, which, it's a cool mission. But he basically made America obsessed with nutrients. So instead of being obsessed with meat and dairy and lettuce, we became obsessed with protein and carbohydrates and magnesium and all these things. We became nutrient obsessed instead of food aware. And that really put a shift on how American consumers looked at their food. And so what was your question?
Does it affect the memory paleo diet?
You figure out what are your priorities in your life and what do you want out of your life. Like if you really get pleasure out of drinking a ton of beer and eating donuts,
Yes.
for whatever reason I pick on donuts, then that's your choice and you should do it. Like you smoke cigarettes or whatever health risk you individually decide to do. But if you're really wanting to prevent health costs, obesity, and Alzheimer's disease and all these things, and you would look into a diet that would prevent these things that have shown, like there's empirical evidence that points that if you eat a diet low in grain and low in carbs, you can have a lot more health benefits from those. So choose what you want out of your life.
So no alcohol.
So in terms of paleo, they have like some friendly alcohols, which would be tequila, notably agave tequila, so no corn-based, right? Like Jose Cuervo and like the more rail tequilas tend to be based on corn, like the alcohol is derived from corn, and red wine, notably red wine, not white wine.
Vodka?
No, because it's based off of grain, so it's a potato, right?
Right.
Different types. Yeah. So if the alcohol derived from a grain, you probably shouldn't be drinking it. This is kind of the reality.
A lot of people know a lot about alcohol in this room.
But tell us more about the future.
That's okay. So also ask again, so no alcohol.
Hey, if you know the risks and you're willing to accept them, it's like smoking. Like there was, before the 1960s when they said, oh, by the way, smoking causes cancer, people were unaware of the risks. And they smoked because they didn't understand that. But as soon as that information came out, people stopped smoking, but 4 days later, the sales of cigarettes shot back up because it was so addicting. People made that decision on their own. Like they were like, you know what, I know the risks, and I don't care. I get more pleasure out of smoking a cigarette right now than I don't care if I get cancer 50 years down the road, or whatever the case may be. So if people have just the knowledge because they chose to get it on their own, or because the government is not telling them otherwise, then they can go out and decide if the donut lifestyle is the way they want to go.
Go ahead.
This question is just for anyone who has an answer. At the federal level, every year the administrative agencies publish between 3,000 and 4,000 new laws. A lot of those are bad, from the FDA, the USDA, the TTB. But you can't fight all of them, there's just too many. So moving forward, what would be your suggestions or steps that Congress could take to kind of either reassert authority or kind of rein in regulations as a whole? Do you guys have any solutions as it relates to food or just in general?
That's a great question. I mean, we Eat Food Legal advocates that food trucks is one issue, but just for sort of food freedom across the board. So whether it's alcohol or foie gras or whatnot, what my sort of long-term vision is, fight issue by issue. In the short term, pick our issues because we're small, we're meat. But in the long term, I have a constitutional vision where I'd like to sort of flip the burden from the people who are selling products to the government. Sort of scrap the rational basis review